32 years. That is all I was given. 32 years to swallow the world whole. I lie here in Babylon, sweating, burning, watching my generals circle my bed like vultures waiting for a carcass. They lean in close, desperate, terrified. They ask me the question that will tear the world apart. Alexander, to whom do you leave your empire? I look at them. I look at the men who fought with me, who bled with me, who hated me, and I whisper the truth to the strongest. Because I know none of them are strong enough to carry my shadow. They say I am dying a man, but I was not born a man. I was born a catastrophe. On the night I screamed my first breath in Pella, across the sea, the great temple of Artemis in Ephesus burned to the ground. The priests ran through the streets, tearing their hair, screaming that a torch had been lit that would consume the East. They were right. I was that torch. I grew up in the shadow of a mountain. My father, Philip, a brutal man, a brilliant man. He conquered Greece with iron and gold. He looked at me, his small, pale son, with a mixture of pride and fear. He saw something in my eyes that didn't belong to him. He hired Aristotle, the greatest mind of the age, to teach me. Aristotle taught me biology, medicine, ethics. He taught me that the Greeks were born to rule, and barbarians were born to serve. He taught me logic, but he could not teach me fire. I found that fire, not in books, but in a beast, Bucephalus, a massive black stallion with a white mark on his forehead, a monster of a horse. No man could mount him. He threw the strongest soldiers into the dust. My father was ready to kill the beast, to send him away as useless. But I saw what they didn't. I saw that the horse was terrified of his own shadow. I was 12 years old. I walked up to the beast. I took the reins. I turned his face toward the sun, so his shadow fell behind him. And in that moment, he stopped trembling. I vaulted onto his back. We galloped across the plains. One mind, one body. When I rode back, my father was crying. He kissed my forehead and said the words that would haunt me forever. My boy, you must find a kingdom big enough for your ambitions. Macedonia is too small for you. He was right. The world was too small, but ambition waits for no one. I was 20 when the knife fell. My father, the great King Philip, murdered at his own celebration, stabbed by a jealous lover, or perhaps a hired assassin. The court exploded into chaos. The vultures circled. The Greek cities, Thebes, Athens, they cheered. They thought the lion was dead and the cub would be easy prey. They called me a boy. They laughed at my new crown. They stopped laughing when I arrived at the gates of Thebes. They rebelled against me. They insulted my authority. They thought I would negotiate. They thought I was a politician like my father. I am not a politician. I am a storm. I gave them a chance. They refused. So I showed the world the price of defiance. I leveled Thebes. I didn't just conquer it. I erased it. I tore down the walls. I burned the temples. I sold 30,000 men, women, and children into slavery. The screams of Thebes echoed across all of Greece. I left only one house standing, the house of the poet Pindar. Because I respect art, I respect beauty, but I do not respect disrespect. The message was clear. The boy was gone. The king had arrived. And now, there was only one direction left to look, east, towards the rising sun, towards the great king, towards Persia. I stood on the shores of the Hellespont, looking across the water at Asia, the land of gold, of monsters, of the immortals. the graveyard of Greek armies. I threw my spear from the ship. It soared through the air, whistling like a bird of prey, and buried itself deep into the Asian soil. I leaped onto the beach and pulled it out. I declared that this land was mine, won by the spear given by the gods. I didn't bring a massive army. I had debt. I had no navy. I had provisions for only 30 days, but I had something Darius, the king of kings, did not have. I had destiny. The first battle, the river Granicus. My generals told me to wait, to attack at dawn. They were afraid of the river, of the steep banks, of the Persian cavalry waiting on the other side. I told them, I did not cross the ocean to be stopped by a puddle. I charged. I didn't send my men. I led them. I rode Bucephalus straight into the water, straight into the arrows. I felt the impact of the spear against my shield. I felt the axe of a Persian commander shatter my helmet, grazing my skull. I saw the fear in their eyes. They were fighting a man. I was fighting for immortality. We butchered them. Then came Esus, Darius III, the emperor of half the world, brought his army to crush me. Hundreds of thousands of men, chariots, archers. But numbers mean nothing if the head is weak. I saw him, Darius, standing in his golden chariot, high above the blood and the mud. I didn't fight his army. I charged straight for him. I wanted to look him in the eye. And when he saw me coming, cutting through his immortals like a scythe through wheat, he broke. The King of Kings turned his chariot and fled. He left his shield. He left his honor. He even left his family. I captured his mother, his wife, his daughters. My men wanted to humiliate them, to treat them as spoils of war. I refused. I walked into their tent. I told them Darius was still alive. I told them they were still queens. I treated them with the reverence due to royalty, because a king does not lower himself to cruelty against the helpless. Cruelty is a tool, not a pleasure. But it wasn't enough to be a king. I marched to Egypt, to the desert of Siwa. I needed answers. I walked alone into the oracle of Amun-Ra. The heat was blinding. The silence was absolute. The priest came out. He looked at me, dusty, tired, human. But he did not greet me as a mortal. He made a mistake in his Greek, or perhaps it was not a mistake at all. He called me son of Zeus. And in the cool darkness of that temple, I realized the truth that had always whispered in my blood. Philip was my father of earth, but my spirit, my fire, came from something higher. I walked out of that desert changed. I was no longer just conquering territory. I was claiming my inheritance. I built Alexandria, a city of marble and light, a city where the wisdom of the world would gather. I realized then, victories die, battles are forgotten, but a city can live forever. But the world still resisted. Tyre, an island fortress, a city floating on the sea, unconquerable. They laughed at me from their high walls. They threw the bodies of my messengers into the ocean. They told me I could not walk on water. So I changed the map. I built a bridge of stone and timber across the sea itself. For 7 months, we toiled under a rain of arrows and fire. I carried stones on my own back. When we finally breached the walls, the slaughter was absolute. I crucified 2,000 of them along the beach, a forest of dying men, a warning to the world. Nature itself will bend before my will. Then came the finale, Gaugamela. Darius had gathered everything, scythed chariots, war elephants, an ocean of soldiers on a flat plain designed to crush us. My generals, Parmenion, begged me to attack at night, to hide our small numbers. I looked at him and said, I will not steal my victory. I slept soundly that night. Why worry? The outcome was already decided. The battle was a storm of dust and noise. But amidst the chaos, I saw the gap. The moment the Persian line shifted, I formed the wedge. We drove straight into the heart of their army. I looked for Darius again, and again he ran. That day, the Persian Empire died. I sat on the throne of Persepolis. I burned their great palace to the ground, not out of hate, but to signal the end of an era. I was the king of kings, the lord of Asia. But the higher I climbed, the thinner the air became. This is the part of the story I wish I could erase. Not the battles, not the killing, but the change. I began to wear Persian robes. I demanded proskynesis. I wanted my men to bow to me, to kiss the ground before me. To the Persians, this was respect. To my Macedonians, my brothers, it was slavery. They looked at me and saw a stranger. They saw a man drunk on his own godhood, Clitus the Black. He was my friend. He was the brother of my nurse. He had saved my life at Granicus, cut off the arm of a Persian noble who was about to split my skull. We were drinking. The wine was dark and heavy. The flatterers were singing my praises, mocking my father Philip, saying I was greater than him. Clitus stood up. He was angry. He shouted that everything I had, I owed to Philip. He shouted that I was forgetting the men who bled for me. He held up his hand and screamed, "This is the hand that saved you, Alexander." The rage, the red, blinding rage took me. It was like the fire of Ephesus burning in my brain. I grabbed a spear from a guard. My friends tried to hold me back. I broke free. I thrust the spear. It went through his chest. The silence in the room was louder than any battle. Clitus fell. My friend, my savior, dead by my hand. I pulled the spear out and tried to turn it on myself, to end the monster I had become. They wrestled it from me. For 3 days, I lay in my tent. I refused food. I refused water. I screamed his name until my voice broke. I had conquered the world, but I could not conquer my own temper. I realized then that a man can win every battle and still lose his soul. I was a god to the world, but in the mirror, I was a murderer. We marched on. India, elephants, monsoon rains that rotted our boots. My men were tired. They were rich, beyond their wildest dreams. They wanted to go home. They mutinied at the Hyphasis River. They cried. They told me, "Alexander, you are a god, but we are only men." I had to turn back. It was the only defeat I ever tasted. Defeated by the love of my own men. We marched back through the Gedrosian desert. It was a hell of sand and heat. Men died by the thousands. Thirst drove them mad. One day, a soldier found a tiny amount of water in a helmet. He brought it to me. The whole army watched. Their lips were cracked, their eyes dead. I took the helmet. I looked at the water. It was life, but I looked at my men, and I poured the water into the sand. "I will not drink," I said, "if my men cannot drink." A cheer went up that shook the dunes. In that moment, I was not a god. I was their king again. We marched out of hell together. And now, Babylon. The fever burns. The old wounds ache. The wine has finally done what no sword could do. I am 32. I have merged the East and the West. I have married Europe to Asia. I have built cities that will last for thousands of years. But I leave no heir, only a world that will tear itself apart for the scraps of my cloak. They ask me, to whom? To the strongest. Because life is not a gift. It is a war. Do not build me a tomb. Let my body be carried by the current of time. I was Alexander. I was the son of Philip. I was the son of Zeus. I was the fire that burned too bright to last. And if you look at the map of your world, you will see I am still there.